Keir Starmer thought he could waltz into a ceremony meant to honour Britain's greatest heroes, but what he faced was a humiliation of historic proportions, a rejection from the very people whose sacrifices helped secure the freedom he enjoys today. On VE Day, when the nation was supposed to pause in solemn remembrance, it was not just the veterans who stood together. It was a united front against a Prime Minister who had long forgotten his promises. Starmer's attempt to stand with the men and women who fought for Britain was swiftly crushed by a backlash so fierce it left him reeling. This wasn't a petty political dispute, this was a bitter betrayal. This was a moment that sent shockwaves through the country, as veterans, those who sacrificed everything, made it clear. You are not welcome here, Keir Starmer. Victory in Europe Day, V-Day, is a date etched in the heart of every Briton. It's not just a day of historical significance. It's a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice made by those who fought and died to rid the world of tyranny. For 80 years, Britain has commemorated the courage of its soldiers, remembering the lives lost in one of the most brutal conflicts in history. This year, however, that sacred day became a stage for a political drama, one that has left Keir Starmer's reputation battered and bruised. The event was meant to honour the heroes who fought for freedom, but instead, it turned into a stark reminder that promises made to veterans have been broken time and time again. Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, had already faced mounting criticism over his handling of veteran affairs. Time and again, he promised bold reforms, new initiatives aimed at improving the lives of those who once wore the uniform. From better housing to mental health support, from job opportunities to welfare reform, Starmer presented himself as the champion of those who served. But behind the speeches and the well-timed platitudes, the veterans were left waiting for change that never came. It all came to a head when news broke that Starmer would be attending the VE Day ceremony. The backlash was immediate and intense. Veterans, fed up with being treated as political pawns, weren't going to let this one slide. The message was clear from the start. If he shows up, we won't be there. It wasn't just idle chatter. The phones of event organisers were soon ringing off the hook. Veterans associations across the country began voicing their outrage. It was no longer about partisan politics. It was about the deep-seated betrayal they felt. These were the very same people who had stood shoulder to shoulder with Starmer's predecessors, supporting them through thick and thin. Yet, now, it was clear that the promises of support made to veterans were nothing more than empty words. The 50 million initiative touted by Starmer, intended to address veteran welfare, was seen by many as a mere token, a slap in the face to those who had sacrificed their youth, their bodies, and in many cases, their lives. As the pressure mounted, the organisers of the VE Day ceremony had no choice but to act. They found themselves caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, they had a Prime Minister desperately trying to save face. On the other, they had the very veterans whose sacrifice had shaped the course of history, and they were demanding action, not speeches. The tension was palpable, and it quickly became clear that Starmer would not be welcome at the ceremony. The decision to disinvite him was made, and just like that, the man who had hoped to stand among heroes was forced to confront the harsh reality of his broken promises. The disinvitation was more than a political snub. It was a symbol of the deep distrust that had built up between Starmer and the veterans. It wasn't just about a single event, it was the culmination of years of neglect. These men and women had been promised better lives, only to be met with bureaucratic red tape, delay, and indifference. For many, Starmer's presence at the ceremony would have been nothing more than another photo op, a political stunt that served only to further insult those who had already been let down by the government. They had seen it all before, the speeches, the empty promises, the promises of reform that never materialised. The disinvitation sent a powerful message. The veterans were done with political games. They no longer had the patience for leaders who would offer nothing but words and photo opportunities. And so, when the decision was made to block Starmer from attending, it was a moment of defiance, a stand against the betrayal they had endured for so long. In the hours following the announcement, the outrage from veterans groups only grew. The backlash spread like wildfire, reaching local branches of the British Legion and veterans associations across the country. The anger was palpable. Starmer had failed to deliver on the promises he made, and now he would be forced to face the consequences. The ceremony, which was supposed to be a moment of unity, had turned into a battleground. And the veterans had made it clear Starmer was not part of their victory. He was not one of them. As the government grapples with rising tensions across the country, one issue that continues to dominate public discourse is the ongoing housing crisis. While politicians have made various attempts to address the issue, the reality on the ground is far from what was promised. The housing crisis has reached a critical point, and without swift and decisive action, the situation will only worsen. According to Florence Eshalomi, MP for South London and chair of the Housing Committee, the most urgent priority must be building more homes for families. With an ever-growing demand for housing, especially in major cities like London, the need for affordable social housing has never been more pressing. Eshalomi estimates that the country needs at least 90,000 new social homes each year to meet the growing demand. However, this number seems to be more of a theoretical target than a practical reality, as the government has yet to take meaningful steps to address the shortage. The gap between what is promised and what is actually being delivered has become a significant point of contention for many. The government's promise to build 1.5 million new homes over the next decade sounds impressive, but the question remains, how many of these homes will actually be social or affordable housing? Eshalomi challenged the Deputy Prime Minister on this very point, demanding concrete figures to ensure that the government's building plans are not just empty promises. So far, the response has been woefully inadequate. Even more concerning is the fact that several London boroughs have yet to begin a single new housing project in the first half of this year. Nationally, the pace of construction is far below what is required to meet the housing needs of the population, and it seems that the government's rhetoric about addressing the housing crisis is nothing more than hot air. The impact of this failure is being felt most acutely in London, where the housing market is already under extreme strain. A recent report from the Centre for London revealed that 3 in 5 renters in the capital are struggling with unaffordable rents. Over half of those surveyed identified high rent levels as one of the top 3 crises facing London's housing market. As the cost of meeting London's housing targets continues to soar, the situation is becoming increasingly untenable. The report suggests that the cost of fulfilling the capital's annual housing needs could reach up to £2.2 billion, 43 times more than the cost of meeting housing needs in the West Midlands. This vast discrepancy has made private developers more hesitant to invest in the capital, further exacerbating the crisis. The stark reality is that the government is failing to address the housing shortage in a meaningful way, and the consequences are becoming clearer with each passing day. One resident in Lambeth, for example, shared that she had been moved through 6 different temporary accommodations in just 10 years. Others, like a mother paying $1,600 per month for a 2-bedroom flat in Wandsworth, have been waiting for social housing for over a decade. Lambeth Council, which is one of the boroughs facing the worst of the housing crisis, has admitted that the shortage of suitable housing for larger families is putting immense pressure on its budget. The number of homeless households supported by the council has risen by 50% in the past 2 years, and the cost of providing temporary accommodation is skyrocketing. This is a situation that is unsustainable, both for the families affected and for the councils that are struggling to keep up with demand. The financial strain on local authorities is mirrored across the country. Nationally, councils are expected to overspend by over $700 million, and homelessness is the primary driver of this financial crisis. Councils are finding themselves in a difficult position, caught between the urgent need to address the housing shortage and the financial constraints imposed by central government. The lack of adequate funding and support from the government has left councils scrambling to provide for those in need, often resorting to temporary solutions that only offer short-term relief. This is not a sustainable model, and the situation is only going to get worse unless the government takes immediate and meaningful action. The housing crisis is not just about the lack of homes, it's about the deepening inequalities that are being exacerbated by the government's inaction. The housing market in London, in particular, is increasingly out of reach for many families. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening, and those who are already struggling are finding themselves pushed further to the margins of society. The impact of this inequality is felt most acutely by children, who are being forced to grow up in overcrowded, unstable environments. The government's failure to address the housing crisis is perpetuating a cycle of poverty that will be difficult to break without significant intervention. In response to the crisis, Florence Echalomi and other politicians have called for a stronger, more comprehensive approach to housing policy. Echalomi has highlighted the need for larger homes for families, particularly those with young children, and stressed that social housing for larger families is becoming increasingly rare. Many families are being forced to wait years for a suitable home, while others are living in overcrowded conditions that put a strain on their mental and physical health. The current system is simply not working, and it is clear that more needs to be done to address the root causes of the housing crisis. The situation is urgent. The government's failure to act has led to a deepening crisis that is affecting thousands of families across the country. With no clear solution in sight, the pressure on politicians to deliver meaningful change is mounting. As more and more families are pushed into temporary accommodation, it is becoming clear that the government's response to the housing crisis has been insufficient. Until the government is willing to invest in real solutions that go beyond empty promises and short-term fixes, the housing crisis will only continue to worsen. And with it, the lives of countless families will remain in limbo, with no end in sight to the suffering they face. As the political landscape in Britain continues to shift, a growing sense of frustration is being felt among the country's younger generation. For years, the younger demographic has been largely overlooked by the government, with their concerns often dismissed as idealistic or irrelevant. However, recent events have highlighted a dramatic change. Today, Britain's youth are increasingly disillusioned with the political establishment, particularly with the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. Once seen as the natural party for young voters, Labour has struggled to maintain its grip on the younger generation, with many now seeking an alternative that better reflects their values and aspirations. This discontent is not just about policy differences, it represents a fundamental shift in the way young people view the future of their country and the role of politics within it. The growing disillusionment with Starmer and the Labour Party is particularly evident in urban centres such as London, where young people feel the weight of the housing crisis, the cost of living, and a lack of real opportunities. For many, Labour's promises of change have failed to materialise, leaving them feeling abandoned and frustrated. A significant number of young voters feel that the party has drifted too far from its working-class roots and is now focused on appealing to the establishment rather than addressing the genuine concerns of those who need help the most. The result is a sense of betrayal among young people who once saw Labour as a champion of their rights and interests. One of the most striking aspects of this growing discontent is the rise of Reform UK, a political movement that has gained significant traction among the younger generation. Reform UK, led by Richard Tice, has positioned itself as a party that is willing to challenge the status quo and fight for change. Unlike Labour, which many young people now view as ineffectual, Reform UK is offering a platform that resonates with those who feel left behind by traditional political parties. With a focus on issues like political reform, economic stability, and a commitment to cutting through bureaucracy, Reform UK has become a beacon for young people who are tired of the same old rhetoric and empty promises. The shift towards reform. UK is not just about policy, it's also about a change in attitude. Young voters are increasingly looking for authenticity in their politicians. They are no longer willing to settle for politicians who deliver speeches full of platitudes and vague promises. Instead, they want leaders who are willing to take bold, decisive action. Reform UK, with its outsider status and willingness to challenge the establishment, has become an appealing alternative for those who are tired of the same old politics. For many, the appeal of Reform UK lies in its commitment to shaking up the political system and offering a genuine alternative to the tired status quo that has failed to deliver for so long. The increasing popularity of Reform UK among young people is also a reflection of broader societal changes. In a time of economic uncertainty, rising inequality, and a rapidly changing global landscape, many young people feel that the traditional political parties are out of touch with their concerns. The cost of living is skyrocketing, and many young people are struggling to afford basic necessities like housing and food. The promise of a better future seems increasingly out of reach, and the lack of meaningful change from established parties like Labour has left many young voters feeling disillusioned. In addition to economic concerns, many young people are also deeply frustrated with the current political climate in the UK. The ongoing debates over issues like Brexit, immigration and national identity have sparked a sense of division and uncertainty that has left many young people feeling alienated. They want to see a government that is focused on the future, not stuck in the past. This frustration is particularly acute among those who voted to remain in the EU and feel that their views have been ignored in the post-Brexit era. For many, the rise of Reform UK represents a chance to break free from the deadlock and divisions that have plagued British politics for the last several years. What makes this shift in political allegiance even more significant is the way it is being expressed. In a clip that has gone viral, a large crowd of young people in a London nightclub can be heard chanting, "Starmer is a wanker." The spontaneous eruption of anger and frustration from the crowd is a clear sign that young people are no longer afraid to voice their discontent with the political establishment. It's not just a fleeting moment of rebellion, it's part of a broader movement that is taking shape across the country. Young people are no longer content to sit on the sidelines and watch as the political establishment fails to deliver. They are actively engaging in politics, using their voices to demand change. The clip from the nightclub is just one example of the growing political activism among young people. While some may dismiss it as a trivial or isolated incident, it is indicative of a much larger trend. Young people are becoming increasingly vocal about their dissatisfaction with the political status quo, and they are looking for a party that will represent their interests and fight for the changes they want to see. The rise of Reform UK is a reflection of this changing dynamic, and it is clear that young people are no longer willing to be ignored. As the political landscape continues to evolve, it is clear that the younger generation will play an increasingly important role in shaping the future of the UK. The disillusionment with Labour and the rise of Reform UK are just the beginning of a larger political shift that is taking place. Whether this movement will translate into real change at the ballot box remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: young people are no longer content to sit on the sidelines. They are ready to make their voices heard and demand the political change that they believe the country so desperately needs. As Keir Starmer and the Labour Party struggle to maintain their footing in a turbulent political landscape, they are facing an increasingly difficult challenge: rebuilding trust. Trust, once the cornerstone of Labour's appeal, has been eroded over years of unfulfilled promises, internal party struggle. The situation has become even more complicated due to Starmer's perceived shift away from the party's traditional values. During his leadership campaign, Starmer presented himself as a figure who could restore the Labour Party's credibility, focusing on rebuilding the party's image after the tumultuous tenure of Jeremy Corbyn. However, in the years since his appointment as leader, Starmer has faced increasing criticism for failing to live up to the high expectations set during his campaign. His leadership has been marked by a lack of boldness and a tendency to compromise on key issues, which has left many feeling that Labour is not offering the change it promised. For many, this is best exemplified in the ongoing struggle to address key issues such as housing, veterans' welfare, and public services. The Labour Party has long been the champion of working-class citizens, but in recent years, it has struggled to present a coherent plan to tackle these pressing problems. Veterans, who once relied on Labour to champion their rights and welfare, now feel betrayed by the lack of progress on key issues such as mental health support, housing, and job opportunities. The $50 million initiative, which was hailed as a step forward in supporting veterans, has been widely criticised as inadequate and a mere political gesture. This sense of betrayal extends beyond veterans. Many working-class communities, particularly in Northern England and the Midlands, feel abandoned by the party. Once Labour strongholds, these areas have seen a significant decline in support for the party, with many voters switching allegiance to parties like the Conservatives and more recently, Reform UK. The failure of Labour to address the concerns of these communities has led to a shift in political loyalties as voters search for a party that is willing to put their needs first. In addition to the disillusionment felt by key demographics, Starmer's leadership has also been hampered by ongoing internal party strife. The Labour Party, once united under the banner of social democracy, has become increasingly factionalised. Starmer's attempts to unite the party have often been met with resistance from the left wing of the party, who see him as compromising too much on issues such as workers' rights, public services and climate change. This infighting has only served to undermine Starmer's credibility and further erode public trust in the Labour Party. The challenge of rebuilding trust is not just a matter of policy, it is also a matter of perception. Many see Starmer as a leader who is more interested in appeasing the political establishment than in taking bold action to address the needs of ordinary people. His tendency to avoid controversy and play it safe has led to accusations that he is more focused on maintaining power than on effecting real change. For a political party that once prided itself on standing up for the underdog and challenging the status quo, Starmer's cautious approach has been seen as a betrayal of the party's founding principles. The erosion of trust in the Labour Party is also reflected in public opinion polls. Despite Starmer's efforts to present himself as a viable alternative to Boris Johnson and the Conservatives, Labour has struggled to make significant inroads in the polls. While Starmer's leadership has been somewhat more popular than that of his predecessor Jeremy Corbyn, it has not been enough to galvanise the public and unite the party. The result has been a stagnant party, unable to break through the political gridlock and offer a compelling vision for the future. This lack of direction is particularly evident in the party's handling of the ongoing housing crisis. As mentioned earlier, the shortage of affordable housing has become one of the most pressing issues facing Britain today, yet Labour has failed to offer a comprehensive plan to tackle it. While the party has made some proposals, such as increasing the number of social homes, these have often been vague and lacking in detail. The failure to offer concrete solutions to the housing crisis has led to a loss of support from key working-class voters, who are increasingly turning to parties that promise to tackle the issue head-on. The same can be said for Labour's approach to veterans' welfare. While the party has made some strides in addressing veterans' issues, such as the 50 million initiative, it has failed to convince veterans that it is genuinely committed to improving their lives. Veterans, who have been let down by successive governments, are increasingly looking for a party that will offer more than just empty promises. For many, Starmer's Labour Party has failed to deliver on its commitments, leading to a sense of betrayal and a loss of trust. As public trust in Labour continues to erode, the party finds itself in a difficult position. The party's traditional base is increasingly disillusioned with its leadership, and the rise of alternative parties like Reform UK is a clear sign that the public is searching for something different. If Labour is to regain its relevance and rebuild trust with the British public, it will need to offer more than just vague promises. It will need to present a bold, cohesive vision for the future, one that addresses the pressing issues of housing, veterans' welfare, and public services. Whether Starmer and his team can rise to this challenge remains to be seen, but for now, the Labour Party's struggle with public trust shows no signs of abating. The housing crisis in the United Kingdom remains one of the most pressing issues facing the country today. Despite numerous promises from successive governments, the shortage of affordable and social housing has only worsened, leaving millions of families trapped in unsuitable or temporary accommodations. This issue has become even more urgent in the wake of rising rents, skyrocketing house prices, and a growing sense of insecurity among renters and homeowners alike. For many, the failure to address the housing crisis represents a profound failure of leadership, and the Labour Party under Keir Starmer is no exception. While the Conservative government has faced sharp criticism for its handling of the housing market, Labour has also struggled to put forward a coherent, practical solution to the crisis. Under Starmer's leadership, Labour has made some attempts to address housing concerns, but these efforts have often been vague, underfunded, and lacking the urgency required to solve the problem. As a result, Labour has failed to inspire confidence in its ability to tackle the housing crisis, and many voters, particularly in working-class communities, have turned to other political parties in search of real change. One of the most pressing issues in the housing crisis is the shortage of social housing. According to Florence Eshalomi, MP for South London, at least 90,000 new social homes are needed each year to keep up with demand. However, the pace of new construction remains far behind this target. In some parts of the country, especially in London, the shortage of affordable housing has reached a critical point, with many families struggling to find suitable accommodations. Eshalomi has directly challenged the Deputy Prime Minister to commit to a concrete figure for the number of social homes to be built, but the government's response has been underwhelming at best. The lack of social housing has led to an increase in temporary accommodation, which, while intended as a short-term solution, has become a permanent fixture for many families. In London, it is estimated that around 90,000 children are currently living in temporary housing, a shocking statistic that highlights the severity of the crisis. This has put immense pressure on local councils, which are already struggling to meet the demand for affordable housing. Many councils, such as Lambeth in South London, have admitted that they are unable to provide adequate housing for larger families, leading to overcrowding and a reliance on temporary solutions that are both costly and unsustainable. The cost of providing temporary accommodation is astronomical, and local councils are increasingly finding themselves in financial distress as they struggle to cope with the growing demand for housing. In fact, the number of homeless households supported by councils has risen by 50% in just 2 years, and councils are projected to overspend by more than £700 million in total. This financial burden is exacerbated by the fact that private developers are increasingly reluctant to invest in the housing market due to the high costs involved. The result is a vicious cycle in which the housing crisis continues to deepen, with no clear solution in sight. Despite these alarming figures, the Labour Party's response to the housing crisis has been lacklustre. Starmer's leadership has failed to offer a clear, detailed plan for addressing the shortage of affordable housing, and the party's proposals have often been criticised as insufficient and overly vague. While Labour has called for an increase in social housing construction, its plans have not been accompanied by concrete commitments or funding, leaving many to wonder whether the party is truly committed to solving the problem. In addition to the shortage of social housing, Labour has also struggled to address the rising cost of rent, particularly in major cities like London. A report from the Centre for London revealed that 3 in 5 renters in the capital say their current rent is unaffordable, with over half of those surveyed citing rent levels as one of the top 3 crises facing London's housing market. The rising cost of rent has made it increasingly difficult for young people and working families to find secure, affordable housing. The situation is further compounded by the fact that many renters are facing the prospect of eviction, as landlords seek to cash in on the booming property market. While the government's failure to address these issues is clear, Labour's inability to offer a real alternative has left many questioning whether the party is truly fit to govern. Labour's inability to present a clear, comprehensive housing plan has contributed to a sense of disillusionment among voters, particularly in working-class communities that have long relied on the party to champion their interests. Many voters feel that the political establishment, regardless of party, is simply not listening to their concerns about housing and is more interested in serving the interests of developers and the wealthy. One of the reasons for Labour's failure to address the housing crisis is the party's internal divisions. While some factions within the party advocate for bold action on housing, others are more cautious, prioritising incremental reforms over large-scale change. This lack of unity has made it difficult for Labour to present a coherent, united front on housing policy. The party's failure to present a clear and decisive plan for tackling the housing crisis has further undermined its credibility and left many voters searching for an alternative. As the housing crisis continues to deepen, it is clear that a more robust and ambitious approach is needed. Labour's current proposals, while well-intentioned, fall far short of what is required to address the scale of the problem. If the party is to regain the trust of voters, it will need to present a clear, detailed plan for tackling the housing crisis that includes not only an increase in the construction of social homes, but also measures to address rising rent levels. and the affordability of housing in both urban and rural areas. Labour must also find a way to unite the party around a common vision for housing policy, moving beyond the current divisions that have hampered progress. Ultimately, the housing crisis is not just a political issue, it is a human issue. Thousands of families across the country are suffering as a result of the lack of affordable housing, and the failure of both the government and Labour to address this crisis is a betrayal of those who rely on these systems for support. If Labour is to rebuild its credibility and regain the trust of the British public, it must offer a real, workable solution to the housing crisis that puts the needs of ordinary people first. Without this, the party risks alienating even more voters and losing further ground to rival political forces. The housing crisis, the failure of political leadership, and the disillusionment felt by ordinary people demand immediate and decisive action. The frustration across the nation is palpable, and it is clear that the status quo is no longer acceptable. The people, particularly veterans and working-class communities, have spoken out, rejecting empty promises and political performances. The time for vague proposals and half-hearted measures has passed. It's time for action that delivers tangible, lasting change. For those who have long been affected by the housing crisis, the lack of affordable housing, rising rents, and insecure living conditions must be addressed now. The solution to these challenges lies not in rhetoric, but in a clear and comprehensive housing strategy, one that includes a significant increase in the construction of social homes, enhanced support for renters, and real reform of the housing market. This will require collaboration between local governments, developers, and organisations that advocate for affordable housing. But most importantly, it requires the political will to challenge the status quo and prioritise the needs of the people over corporate interests. Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have a choice. They can either continue to offer vague promises and empty words, or they can take bold action and lead the charge in addressing the housing crisis. The public is waiting for answers, and the time to act is now. Politicians must recognise that it's no longer enough to make promises on paper, they must deliver results. If you are tired of seeing the same empty rhetoric year after year, if you believe in real effective change that puts the needs of the people first, now is the time to make your voice heard. Hold your political leaders accountable. Demand that they stop relying on political optics and start focusing on what truly matters. The people who built this country, who fought for it, and who continue to face hardship. Take action by contacting your local representatives, joining advocacy groups, and spreading the message that the housing crisis cannot be ignored any longer. We must continue to push for reforms that will ensure affordable housing for all, not just the privileged few. Your voice matters, and together we can make a real difference. Let's hold our leaders accountable and demand the change that is long overdue. So share your thoughts in the comments below. Get involved. Together we can push for a better, more secure future for everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to help amplify the conversation. Let's make sure our voices are heard and demand the change our communities deserve. It's time to act, and the time is now.